I was in old Silverwater at the time, and I had a bunch of cash stashed outside. Anyway, I managed to scale this 24-foot barrel fence. Managed to scale a few fences. By this time, the squad's coming down the street. We're into Cabramatta River. I'm bleeding from cut. I got cut from razor wire. Swum across Cabramatta River. There was all torches. There was water police on the way. Whole air was up there. So yeah, I got away, bro.
All that talk to my gang pull up and we pull up and they all dip.
Yo, it's your boy King Dave here, and this is the Felon Show. Hope all is going well. How about you introduce yourself, my man, and where you're from?
Hey, Dave, from Sydney, Australia. Camperdown, brother.
This is Danny Shannon here, man. A very good man. He's a drug counselor, case manager in a rehab over there in Sydney. He also founded his own app called Encapsulator, which is to do with drug counseling and rehabilitation as well. So definitely go check that out in the App Store, Encapsulator. So I'll run into that as well. But again, you know, obviously to be on the show, he's got a story of redemption. He himself has been through that walk of life of, you know, drug addiction and prison, unfortunately, but like most of the people on the show, well, all of the people on the show, he's been able to turn a negative into a positive, man. And that's what we're all about here, brother. So Camperdown, huh? That's where your story begins, is it, brother?
Thanks, Dave. I've checked out the podcast. I love the lineup to it. I love that, you know, the lifestyle that I live and I've led. I know some of your guests too, mate. So it's an absolute pleasure to be on here, mate. My story is not quite as hectic as some of your past guests, but no, mate, I grew up in Cabra. Okay, you know Cabra, Cabramatta is where all the heroin was happening back in the 90s for sure. So I grew up out Cabramatta way, mate, out in the western suburbs.
Oh, okay, so you grew up out there. So can you paint a picture of what that was like for you, man, growing up around there?
Yeah, sure, man. So, look, I always say that I come from a pretty good family. I always give my mum a big shout out. You know, mum taught me so many of these good values and morals that I feel like I still have ingrounded me. I love to talk about my dad. My dad's nickname is Shonky, right? He taught me everything I shouldn't have known, you know. So Shonky, me dad, kind of helped me lead me down a bit of a bad path. And I always remember mum for sort of teaching me all that good stuff too, mate. I grew up in in the west, like in the out in Cabramatta way. I went to primary school out that way. I picked up drugs at the age of 14. I first got on the smoko, the alcohol, and cream bulbs. I don't know if you know the nangs. Got on them one night. And it was kind of like where my journey started there, brother. My mum moved back to Sydney. She kind of had this last hurrah with my dad. That was the idea of moving up to Bundy, and it didn't work out. And then I'm left up there with my dad, who let me do anything, basically. He used to travel overseas a lot. So I'd be left at home a lot. And that's when I started picking up, I think, LSD, speed, magic mushrooms, all those. And then at the age of 15 and a half, 16, I picked up heroin for the first time, mate. And if I had identified that maybe I had a bit of an issue in that previous 2 years with all the other substances, it wasn't until I picked up heroin for that first time that, you know, that I'd found my drug, man, you know, and pretty quickly, you know, like I mentioned, I had a lot of mates. I moved back to Sydney by this time too. I had a lot of mates, but they started to drop off pretty quickly once I picked up heroin. You know, I became just obsessed with the getting and using of gear every day. You know, and by the time I was 16, I was locked up in boys' homes for warrants, and I think it was a fraud check. By the time I was 18, I was locked up in Cabramatta prison. I spent my 18th birthday in there. And, mate, I got on the methadone actually at the age of 21. They told me, right? They said, Danny, if you get on the methadone, you'll be able to get a better quality of life, and you'll also be able to stop using heroin. Well, that wasn't my story. You know, I got on the methadone at 21, and I got on it because by that time I'd been in and out of jail quite a lot, and I'd be hanging out. You know, you go in there hanging out. You wouldn't, you know, take your days to get through that. So I heard if I got on the methadone too, they'd dose you in there, and I'd be able to sort of get through that. And I figured I had a lot more jail coming at that stage too. So I got on the methadone and I got trapped on that for the next 13 years, bro.
Wow, it's crazy, yeah, the whole methadone program, especially in jail in Australia, because I mean, there's that many people I know that have jumped on the dome that didn't even have a heroin habit, but it just helped them get through their jail and things, and then they just end up getting on the methadone, and yeah, a lot of the times they end up getting stuck on it, man. I mean, I almost ended up on the dome program when I was in there, man, you know, close to it. So,
Bro, you just
it's
gave me a memory actually. Like I was up in Goldsmith 12, and there was this HIV scare going around the jail. And because of it, apparently there was fits in the pod that had HIV. And because of it, this is unprecedented. They basically offered anyone that wanted to get on the methadone that day could sign up and you could go down to the clinic. And I was already on it, but my cellmate, I was telling him how mad it was because it kind of was in jail, you know, you're constantly stoned somewhat. And he got on the methadone. He didn't even use drugs, mate, this guy. And I wonder what happened to him, you know?
Yeah, interesting.
So you're right.
How was Cabramatta for you, man, when you first got into there?
Yeah, mate, so that was the first prison that I went into. Look, it was very scary, mate. You know, it was very scary for me. I remember that much. But what I do know is it was kind of scary, I guess, in some weird twisted way. I remember it kind of being exciting too. I don't know if that actually reflects the truth, but when I think back to it, but it was a scary time for me, I guess. But I got through, mate.
Yeah. So how were your next couple of years? I mean, after jumping on the methadone and things like that.
Yeah, cool. So like I think I spent probably the majority of my time between the age of 18 and 28 in and out of custody. You know, I did a couple of 18-month sentences, a couple of 12-month sentences, and just the rest is all remand, in and out all the time. I'd get out and I wouldn't last long, you know, like I remember I was on drug court at one stage, couldn't pull that off, you know, I just was not able to put down the drugs, you know. I had that obsession and compulsion just to use drugs, whatever the case would be, you know. So I'd get out to rehab and I'd leave, knowing. So you get released from jail, thinking, "Mad, this is my chance." I think I had good intentions going to rehab, but then I'd get there, reality would kick in, and I just had to get on, you know. And I normally hook up with some chick or put together some money, knock something off, and go and get my first hit, and it'd be back on again. And then it's like I had this, I always call it a halo. A halo is probably not the best expression, but whenever I was driving a stolen car, for example, it's like it was impossible for police to drive past me without just spotting me. You know, it's like I stood out like dog's balls, and it would always be on. You know, there was always the chase would be on. I'd never give up, of course, and I'd be bouncing fences, and I'd usually get pinched, mate, and bashed, and whatever it took to come along with that stuff. In jail, I've got to admit, I was stoned pretty much my entire time I was in custody, from at least from the time I was on methadone. There was a lot of pot smoking, a little bit of other substances in there. I kind of did that process all right, but then you get out and it'd just be on again. You know, I just had that unrelenting obsession to get on. And
well, what was your drug of choice after going on the methadone?
Mate, good question. So I continued to use heroin for the next 6 years.
Whilst on the methadone?
Yeah, whilst on the methadone. Like, and I think I was probably using a bit of speed through that time as well, and smoking pot. But eventually I figured out that methadone the heroin just wasn't working. You still would get a slight taste. And it was like this idea that as long as I had heroin in me, that I'd be, that I was kind of stoned, you know. But eventually, after about 6 years on the methadone, I picked up, I remember actually the days I was getting on in Cabramatta, and Shabu hit the streets. Maybe we're talking 2001, which was ice. That's what I remember it hitting the streets in Cabra, and I thought, I've got to try this. They said it was like Coke, and the minute I tried that, was basically the day I started to switch to the ice, mate. So I got on the Shabu, and For the next 6 years, I still took my methadone daily, but I was using ice very regularly as well, you know, in and out of jail as well.
Wow. Well, what are some of sort of the harsher realities of that life and on the streets and, you know, overdosing and all of that sort of scene?
Yeah, bro. I remember overdosing on Liverpool train station. I'd used in the toilets. I knew I'd used too much. And
How old were you at this time? Was this your first time overdosing?
I had so many overdoses, brother. I reckon I overdosed about 15 times. Okay, even though I was on the methadone for that 12 years, there were certainly periods in between that I couldn't get dosed, or I'd been kicked off and I'd get back on it. So these were the times that I'd usually overdose. And I'd overdose this time on Liverpool train station. And paramedics, I remember waking up to paramedics around me, giving me Narcan, and I ended up with 3 broken ribs. And I remember for the next like 6 months, just kind of nursing those ribs. And I've got this vivid memory of like, fuck, my chest was purple too. Like, this is from them giving me CPR, trying to save my life. And I got up after that overdose and went and got on again too, you know. There's plenty of other occasions like that where I'd use in the flat. I remember using in this flat in Doonside and just walking out because I knew I'd used too much. I knew I was going to drop, and someone had found me, and again, paramedics were called and they give me the Narcan. I'm just fucking blessed to be here, brother. You know, like so many overdoses. And to go back to the homelessness stuff, there certainly was up the cross in Woolloomooloo, living in the streets in the back of Cabra, in car parks. I'm certainly taking advantage of homeless shelters at times too. They were putrid. Using dirty needles in the back of the flats at Cabramatta, you know, because it's not even as if I couldn't get by needles. It's like I got the gear, I need to use it immediately. And I think back to those times and I just had no control. I'd flush 3 times and I'd use dirty needles, mate. You know, just putrid shit, mate.
But did you ever witness other people overdosing and stuff like that?
Yeah, sure, man. Look, actually, I have absolutely. I've witnessed people overdosing. Called the ambulances, tried to give CPR. Just 2 years ago, I witnessed a very serious, a loved one overdose. In recovery too. So I'm very blessed today to be 12 years, 6 months, and maybe 20 days abstinent since I've used any mind or movement stuff. Thank you, brother. So yeah, man. Look, brother, I've been in recovery for, like I said, over a decade. In that time, we've lost probably over 100 members dead from heroin overdose as well. No shit, like when I say 100, I'm actually not exaggerating. These are all people that I knew, shook hands with, I had some kind of a relationship with too. It's become quite a numb thing, you know. I don't go to funerals in recovery too. I went to one in my early days and I swore I'm never doing this again, you know. And not that I knew there was plenty more to come, but I just remember feeling really scared and quite emotional and yeah, horrible stuff, mate.
Yeah, that's tough, brother. I mean, I've never actually had a heroin habit. I have dabbled with heroin whilst in prison, you know, over in Oz, but I never actually had a habit. But the people that I do know who have had a habit, it's a tough life, isn't it, man? You know, having to deal with all that, especially the overdosing, and it's definitely not an easy path, is it? Like, what's it like, man, overdosing? Like, can you remember it all, man? Like, you say, like, you realize you're taking too much and you just start heating up and then you're waking up with paramedics standing over you pretty much.
Pretty close, man. It's like, I like giving this description. I don't get to, because you asked, it's like you have too much, right? Or this is just the hit of heroin, right? And it's like you just get this instant glow. And this is how I remember overdose being. It's like this blackness or this warm glow starts coming closer and closer. It's like I'm feeling this thing coming closer and closer. And the idea of me getting stoned on heroin is for it to stop like here, but the overdose is just you black out, you know, like you're gone. And you know, fuck, you hear so many stories of people basically being at that stage, maybe not dead, but and then waking up 3 hours later on the nod and having to have a limb amputated because the blood's been completely cut off to that limb, you know. But I think the overdose is exactly that. Like you just that glow just doesn't stop, and you go unconscious. You turn blue instantly. Like that chick that I revived last year, a couple of years ago, she was blue in seconds. Like her, scary thing, mate.
Wow.
Like I've got a beautiful 4.5-year-old daughter, and I've got a 20-year-old son. Like I can't imagine, and that's all I ever say to loved ones is I can't quite imagine what you're going through. But I want to let you know that at the worst of my addiction, it wasn't as if like there was something in me that just kept going,
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm moving forward, brother. So, I mean, so you ended up escaping from Silverwater jail, or was it? You ended up hitting the legs from there. So what happened there? Was that your last prison sentence as well, man? Was that your last?
No, it wasn't. Definitely. I ended up with a knee classo after that. So I probably spent a couple more years in custody after that. But yeah, if you want to hear that story, I'd love to share it with you. I was in old Silverwater at the time, and I was doing quite a short sentence too, man. But you know what was niggling away at me? And it was quite the mission too, let me share with you. But I had a bunch of cash stashed outside, like 30 grand as well, right? And I was with my family, and it just kept niggling at me like, Danny, you got to get out there to do it. It was my partner's birthday. So it was the 6th of February, 2001. And I was doing this program called Kairos. I don't know if you remember it's this religious program that they run in a lot of the jails here. And what Kairos meant was let's say a Wednesday evening, whatever day the 6th of February was we're in the visiting area with little security around, I guess, because they're trusting us with this religious group. And look, just for the record, I used to go because there was great coffee and biscuits there as well. But I remember there was this opportunity at the end of Kairos where we'd all stand around, I think hold hands and say some kind of prayer, right? And I'd spent a couple of years at Old Silverwater by this time, and I'd worked out that there was this one part in that jail where the big barrel fence, and it's a 24-foot barrel fence, right? But the big barrel fence overlapped another spot, and I thought you could fucking get up there because you didn't have to climb over that barrel. And sure enough, I convinced old mate, me Sally at the time, that we were gonna do the bolt if he was keen. I had cash outside, was waiting. I had it lined up. I spoke to Michelle that day. I said, listen, if you could see me tonight, I needed permission from her. I said, if you could see me tonight, would you be all right with that? It's her birthday too. She said, I don't know what she fucking thought, right? But hours later, she was getting raided, her whole house, my mum's house, my dad's house. Anyway, I managed to scale this 24-foot barrel fence. We got caught by an officer up on the barrel, which was never the plan. He just happened to be doing a perimeter search right at the right time. And could you imagine this guy? Like, it's probably 8 p.m., sees 2 inmates up on the barrel. He would have just shit himself, man. And he was on the radio to the MEU. So by the time I'd leapt off this barrel, it was a big fucking jump, bro. I landed on my arm from here to here. It was black. We ran down Holker Street towards Cabramatta River. Managed to scale a few fences. By this time, the squad's coming down the street. We're into Cabramatta River. I'm bleeding from cut. I got cut from razor wire as I jumped from the fence as well. Swam across Cabramatta River. There was all torches. There was water police on the way. Pole Air was up there. But, mate, I managed to swim across Cabramatta River and land in these big, thick mud mangroves that they just couldn't see us, mate. I was underground half the time. And we ended up getting away, mate. They couldn't find us. So, yeah, I got away, bro. I ended up in...
Well, how long did you stay in the mangroves for?
Mate, it probably took 2 hours in my head for me to get from Silverwater jail, and we ended up coming out on Cabramatta Speedway in the old demolition derby part. It was like, I remember coming up on this section where there was like, I call it a demolition graveyard. There was old burnout cars there, and got onto James Roos Drive after that, and crossed this 8-lane highway in my jail greens, covered in mud.
Wow.
Yeah, so, and actually, old mate with me, the plan was we were going to steal a car, right? We had a fucking screwdriver or something that we brought with us, but we couldn't get a car, right? And and we're slowly separating. I know I've got cash out there. A taxi's probably not going to pick me and him up, but I'm keen. I'm going to support him with me. But I lost him, mate. He's trying to steal the car, and sure enough, he was on the news that night, drunk at his missus's house, and they've ended up calling the cops on him. And I got away. I managed to get some fake ID together with one of my connections in Livo and made it to Perth, where I got pinched 6 days later on Valentine's Day with my girl. And I always say how romantic it was getting caught on Valentine's Day. I got dragged out of this hotel, poolside naked, probably stomped on a little bit, cuffed and thrown in the fucking wagon, and spent the next few days in the Perth watch house until But yeah, that's my jail escape story, mate.
Wow. Well, so man, from there, I mean, so you said, you've spent the next couple of years, in custody and jail and all of that. So when did the whole rehabilitation thing come about for you?
Yeah, good. That's enough of the mess, eh? That's the mess. All right. I'll talk a bit about the message of recovery. Yeah. So in 2009, brother, I have shit you not, I've done 50 rehabilitation attempts from the age of 18, which was a place called Wisteria House back. It's closed down now, to the age of 33, where I landed in my last detox. I'd done so many rehabilitation attempts. I just never was serious. I was doing it for my mom, for my sister, whatever. Anyway, the last time around, I took drugs into detox with me like I always would. Going to detox with drugs, like just definition of insanity, I guess. But it was Herbert Street Clinic out at St. Leonard's. I was off the methadone by this stage too, of course. I went through detox. I started ringing up some phone numbers. I went into this program called Foundation House in Roselle. That was a 28-day program. And then I landed in another place called Glebe House, and I spent the next 4 months there. So, and something that's really important that I should share, I was 60 days clean. I was in rehab, and this is the day my life changed forever. I was in rehab. It was Christmas time, which makes sense. It was 2009, December 2009. I'm 60 days clean. I went on a leave out to Cabra to visit my family, right? The boss of the rehab didn't want me to go. And anyway, I convinced her that I should. But sure enough, my head stopped at Cabramatta. I'm going to get on. I was going to throw it all away. And I couldn't get on. I don't know why I couldn't get on. So then I went back to Fairfield. I tried to get on at Fairfield. Again, I couldn't get on. I'm sure I could have, but I also had my mum waiting for me at Liverpool. So I decided, all right, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to get on. I'll go visit my family. I stayed overnight. The next day, I came back to rehab, and I thought, well, fuck it. I'm up the cross. I was standing at Town Hall Station. I could get on the bus across the road and go back to rehab, or I could walk up William Street and definitely get on. I remember that day, man. I was sitting there and I was thinking, all this stuff's playing over in my head. I know if I go up there and get on, I know I'm kicked out. I know that I'm a good chance of ending back in rehab because I'm good at getting back here. I could die as well, I suppose, or I could get on that bus and go back to rehab, mate. And fuck, for the first time in my life, I made a different decision. I got on the bus and I went back to rehab. And brother, a fucking absolute miracle. I've never come even close to picking up another drink or a drug since that day. And that's like 12 years and 6 months ago, man.
Wow.
Fuck. Like when I say it, the obsession and compulsion was just lifted, mate. And don't get me wrong, like I worked extremely hard for the next 12 years to maintain my recovery. I was involved in heaps of 12-step fellowship meetings. I was doing service. I was giving back. I was doing counseling. And I still do all of that stuff on a daily basis, So, but the obsession was just lifted that day, bro. I never come close to picking up drugs again, just for today, thank God. So, yeah.
Oh, that's a beautiful thing, man. Yeah, it is that big moment, though, isn't it? Like you said, man, where you're at that crossroads
The
And
crossroads.
when you choose that path, isn't it? Even though, like you said, you got to keep working, you got to keep working, but that weight is just lifted once you take that path, isn't it? At that specific crossroads in your life, you know, which every recovering addict will come across. You know, every addict will come across on the way to recovery. So I
I
mean,
hope.
now, man, you know, you're a drug counselor now, and man, tell us about this app, bro, Encapsulator.
Thank you, man. Love to share. So I started working in the same rehab that I went through the last rehab, right? And I was sitting at my desk. All right, so I've been there for 10 years now, actually working in drug and alcohol. So in that time, in the 10 years, what an incredible career I've got, bro. I actually get paid to do recovery now, you know, like, and I always talk up my job, how amazing it is to work in rehab. But anyway, I'll just go back like about 5 years ago. I think I was celebrated 6 years clean. I was sitting at my desk, right, full of gratitude, really excited. It's my 6 year birthday. And I was sitting on the opposite side of the desk where I was once a client, you know, and I was thinking, fuck, I wonder what I was like when I entered this place, you know, like what was I thinking? How was I feeling? And I came up with this idea to record a video to myself for my 10-year birthday. I did a little bit of research on some questions that you could answer going into the old school time capsule. I started the camera rolling. I'm sitting there in front of the camera. I've got these questions in front of me, and I start talking to my future self. And immediately it just struck me, this is such a weird, unique, beautiful therapeutic process talking to my future self. You know, I was going through these questions and I started to get quite emotional. One of the questions I answered was, tell me about your loved ones. Like, it struck me right then. Like, first of all, I hope I'm still clean and I hope I'm still alive, you know. And then I thought about my mom, my dad, my son, and I started to get really emotional, you know, because in 5 years' time, fuck, I wonder how they are, you know. I wonder how I'm going. I started talking about my dreams, my hopes, you know, my future aspirations. And by the end of the video, it struck me that this would be an amazing tool to give to every single client that comes through our rehab service, which is exactly how the app started, mate. I captured over 250 videos of where individuals would go into a private space and record a message to their future self. Because so often clients come up to me and they go, Danny, like, fuck, when are things going to get better? You know, I haven't changed, but me being a worker and working with that person, I see heaps of change in them. And often as individuals, we don't see our own personal growth. So Encapsulator gives these guys a tool to measure their growth, documenting what they're like when they first enter treatment. And actually the way it's set up now is stage 1, stage 2, they'll answer a different series of questions which pop up on screen of the app. So you literally hit record and you start responding to some engaging questions that help you to create the best video possible. It gets locked away to a predetermined date of your choice. Let's just say 6 months. The countdown begins and your video that you upload disappears into our secure time-locked vault, waiting for a predetermined date in the future for you to discover, mate. That's Encapsulator.
That's such a good idea, brother. That's awesome. Also, you can download that from the App Store, is it?
Yeah, you can, man. So, look, I'm pretty much a one-man show. I do have an amazing business partner who's also a web developer and the app developer. We've come a long way, bro. I've got a little bit of a way to go, but we just recently received some government funding, which is incredible, from New South Wales government, which helped us to develop the app. So the app is now available on the App Store and also available for Android. But to get access to the app, you need to have a subscription. So I'd encourage people, if they want to check us out, you can locate us at encapsulator.io. You'll see on there basically all the benefits and value. You can subscribe. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and more importantly, any organizations out there interested in using Encapsulator to document their clients' journeys, I'd love to hear from you. And you can find us at encapsulator.io. All my details are there, mate.
Brother Danny, man, I appreciate your time there, man. We're coming to the end here, brother. But yeah, man, I'm wishing you all of the best in all of your endeavors. You heard it here, encapsulator.ao. Go check it out. Yeah, Well, you know, do you have any messages that, or any ending messages that you'd like to give, man, to maybe any recovering addicts or people who are looking to enter into recovery and that?
Great question, bro. Like, you heard my journey, 50 rehabilitation attempts. My message absolutely is don't ever give up. You know, like, it's like the stars and planets. This is so cliche, but it's like the stars and planets aligned for me right then, that day, up the cross where I was going to get on the bus, and I made a different decision for the first time in my life. So, you know, like, don't ever give up. And you know, I also want to say that I think the community, and even as individuals struggling, we think that there isn't a lot of help out there. But if you are patient and a little bit persistent, there is so much help available. And anyone that would like any more guidance around that stuff, please feel free to reach out to me directly. I'll reply to every single message I get. Hit me up on Instagram ideally, because I love to reply with audio replies, because I'm way too lazy to text back to all the messages. But yeah, don't ever give up. And there is plenty of help available. And mate, I say, you know, like, if I could do it, a hopeless fucking heroin drug addict, homeless on the streets, 17 years of pain, hurt, and misery. I never thought I could do this, you know, and here I sit today, I guess, you know, over a decade recovery, loving my life. I'll just finish with this. I love my work. I love my life. I smile way too much, and it's my job as a man in recovery, and also just as a human being, to carry the message of hope and love with anyone else out there struggling, mate.
Oh, man. Thank you, Danny. That is an awesome message, man. And I back you there 100%, man. Never give up. You know, I always tell people that, you know, even when they do fall off the wagon, man, I just tell them, man, don't give up. You know what I mean? You can always get back up, dust yourself off, and just keep going, keep pushing. You know what I mean? All right, man. Well, Danny, brother, enjoy your rest of the day, man. And we'll catch up soon anyway, my bro.